Good evening, Club Z. My name is Amit Weissman, and I'm 16 from the Bay Area chapter. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker. Born in the UK, he joined the British forces at 18. He's a former British commander, public speaker, and Zionist activist who served in the British Army for over 30 years. He's best known for his military service in many high-stakes operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and more. His constant desire to pave the way for future young Zionists is truly inspiring. He has dedicated his life to fighting terrorism both in combat and on stage. He has spoken out in UN Human Rights Councils, and he helps debunk lies made about Israel on social media. We are incredibly fortunate to hear from such a remarkable speaker today. Since October 7th, he has spent most of his time in Israel, traveling to Gaza, the Lebanese border, and Judea and Samaria. Through his work, he has shown fearlessness and resilience, which should inspire every single one of us. Without further ado, everybody, please give a warm welcome to former British commander and current human rights activist, Colonel Richard Kemp.
I know you love to hear Rule Britannia blasted out like that. We decided a few years back to let you Americans go on your own way. We'd had enough of mentoring and all that sort of stuff, so we decided to get you to leave the empire. And to be honest, you haven't done a great job, so we may well have to come back and deal with it. But there's something. I've been coming to this conference for 5 years now. I thought I'd have graduated before this, but Marsha insists I keep coming to learn more. But there's a question that's been troubling me, and I'm not quite sure. I hope maybe you can help me with the answer. Which of all the different Club Z chapters, which is the best one? Okay. All right. I think we've got an answer. We've got a solution to that, and which I'll give you later. By the way, who's here from New York? When I say New York, I include New Jersey because it's the same thing. I just want to let you New York hooligans know that I'm going to be when I leave here, I'm going to be going to New York. So if you see me on the streets of New York, bear in mind 3 things. 1, I never carry cash. 2, I don't have any credit cards. 3, my phone is lousy and I can track it. So no need to get any ideas. I know what New Yorkers are like. Who's from North Carolina? Not many. That's pretty weak. I want you, North Carolinians, I want you to hold up both your hands, please. Yeah. Yeah. No, they're all inbred, so they've got extra fingers, most of them. Who's from the Bay Area? Am I right? You're the worst chapter? And what about LA? To be honest, I don't mind people from LA, but they are very, very woke. So, you know, who have I missed? Oh, who's from Boston? Stand up, the Bostonians. Stand up if you're from Boston. Stand up if you're from Boston. Stand up. Now look around the. You're not Club Z. You're kind of interlopers, but look around the room. Look around the room at these other people here. You could become a Club Z chapter, and if you did, just looking around the room here, you're obviously going to be the best chapter in the whole of Club Z. Anyone from the UK here? You're from the who's from the UK? Jacob. Yeah, it's good to see we got reinforcements. Do you want a bottle of water? Or beans on toast? Fish and chips? Chicken tikka masala, yeah, our national dish. Anyone else? Anyone from what? I just any Russians? Who's Russian? Or yeah, you're all a pretty bad bunch. I'm going to speak as briefly as I can, and I'm a person who loves the sound of my own voice. So it may be not as brief as possible. I want to give you as much time as I can to ask questions at the end. But what I want to say, as Amit mentioned just now, I've been in Israel for most of the last 15 months. I've been into Gaza a number of times. I've been to Lebanon. I've been to Syria. I've seen exactly what the IDF is doing. I've seen how they've been fighting. I've been in Israel every single war fought since 2008 between Israel and Gaza. So, and I was, as he said also, I was 30 years in the British Army. So I'm not saying all this to boast and show off. I'm saying that because what I'm going to tell you, everything I'm going to tell you over the next 2-3 hours, whatever it is that I'm allowed to speak for, is not based on what I read in a book or what I saw on TikTok. Not that you're allowed TikTok anymore, or any other social media. But I'm gonna base it on my own direct experience of fighting in wars and of observing the IDF and other countries fighting in wars. I've also been to Ukraine a few times since this war began, so I've seen that conflict as well. So what I'm going to tell you now is not kind of university crap. This is what I would consider to be hard fact. People often accuse me of being biased towards Israel. Who would not be, in a war like this, who would not be biased towards Israel? It's like saying, it's like saying, you know, to somebody in 1941, are you biased against Nazi Germany? Yeah, of course you are. So who's not going to be biased towards Israel fighting this extremely just war? Does anyone tell me if there's been a kind of 7th of October before 2023? Has there been anything like it, a similar kind of attack? Anyone know? Yeah, what do you say? 9/11? Okay, anything in Gaza like this? Yeah. In Gaza. Okay, there has been, and it was 2019. And in 2019, Hamas and the other terrorist groups in Gaza attempted exactly the same thing as they did on the 7th of October, but they attempted it in a different way. And what they did, throughout large portions of time in 2019, they staged border so-called protests, in other words, violent riots, on the border with Gaza, with a view to trying to get in to the exact same places that Hamas got into on the 7th of October. They tried that tactic. It didn't work. They were rebuffed. They had a lot of people killed in the process. And I just want to show you, to prove this point, I want to show you a short video clip of some evidence I gave in which I explained this situation to the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva in 2019. Can we have that video, please?
The Israeli security forces committed serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. These violations clearly warrant criminal investigation and prosecution.
We have provided documentation to the High Commissioner's Office. We would urge members of the Council and the international community to ensure that those are brought to the International Criminal Court.
Murder and bloodshed is the dominant tactic of the occupying force. In its report, these abuses were war crimes, crimes against humanity.
Ongoing barbaric aggression by the Israeli occupation forces against civilian protesters.
The document has made clear that they were killed in cold blood. We hail the report from the COI and thank the COI for the efforts deployed. We firmly condemn the aggression at the hands of the Israeli forces.
The report of the Commission is testimony to Israel's unlawful behavior and disregard of human rights.
The views of power by the Israeli army against the Palestinian demonstrators in Gaza.
I give the floor to United Nations Watch.
Mr. President, I was a British commander in Northern Ireland, Iraq and Afghanistan, and have extensive experience dealing with rioting crowds whipped up by armed terrorists. I have observed the violent demonstrations on the Gaza border many times from the front lines, unlike you, Mr. Chairman, and your Commission, who have never been there. These are outrageous efforts to break through the fence and slaughter Jewish civilians. Hamas also set out to induce the IDF to kill Gaza civilians, to instigate global condemnation of Israel. The IDF took every possible step to avoid Palestinian casualties, but using live ammunition as a last resort was the only way they could defend their own people. The Commission grotesquely perverts this reality. I accuse this Council of handing a deliberately biased mandate to the Commission intended to defame Israel. I accuse this Commission of misrepresenting Hamas's actions, twisting organised violence into peaceful protest. I accuse this Commission of acting as an instrument of Hamas terrorism by falsely accusing Israel of crimes against humanity, by validating terror tactics and by inciting killing and violence. I accuse this Commission of betraying the Palestinian people by failing to condemn their Hamas oppressors who, as we meet today, are firing on genuine peaceful protesters in Gaza. I accuse this Commission of wicked prejudice against the Jewish state and its army in a manner calculated to undermine its ability to defend itself. Greater violence is planned by Hamas in a few days. Violence this Council could restrain by condemning Hamas for its murderous actions and rejecting this outrageous report. I appeal to every member state to repudiate it. If you do not, you will have the blood of Palestinians and Israelis on your hands. Thank you. That wasn't the reaction I got from the United Nations Human Rights Council. They were very unhappy, but they tried to cut me off, but they didn't succeed. But some female ambassador from a North African country spoke to me afterwards, straight after I gave my speech, and she said, "Colonel Kemp, your soul will burn in hell for all eternity for the lies you've told to this commission today." I was delighted. Now, I need a volunteer. I'm looking for an intelligent one, but it's quite hard. It's quite hard to spot an intelligent person in this audience. You'll do. You don't look very intelligent, but I think you can do this up on the stage. Tell them who you are and where you're from.
I'm Dean. I'm here from the Bay Area.
Right. What I want to do, have you got a pen there? Yeah. I want you to tell me, don't just shout out, shove your hand up and I'll nominate you. I want you to tell me what the main bad things that have been said about Israel during this conflict, not every single detail, the main bad things. And Dean is going to write it down, and then I'm going to go through it and refute every single one of them without hesitation, whatever you tell me. So, yeah, you make a start. Genocide. Maddie. Apartheid state. occupation, illegal occupation, killing babies, and let's say babies and innocent civilians. Babies might or not be innocent civilians. I had 2 of my own, and they weren't that innocent. Yeah. Guy with the chin. Human rights violations. What else? War crimes. Harry? What? Harboring Netanyahu. Harboring a war criminal, okay. What? Concentration camps. Any others? Yeah. Lady here, yes. Starvation, the war crime of starvation. You're very pick-me, aren't you? Sorry? A white supremacist state? Specifically targeting civilians. Any others? Yeah. Chemical warfare, that's a good one. Matan. White phosphorus, let's link that with chemical warfare. Father Christmas. Sorry? Immoral army, yep. Yeah, guy at the back there. What? Human trafficking. Right, okay, well that is what happened. What? Nazi ideology. How many you got? You got enough there? A lot. Are you writing quick enough? I forgot to ask you if you'd write. You can. Yeah. Trapping Gazans in an open-air prison. Any others? Yeah, depriving them of water and electricity, humanity. It's like starvation as well in a way. Yeah. Taking all their money. You do that. You know what Jews and money are like, don't you? I'm not anti-Semitic, by the way. Not knowingly. A friend of mine, before you attack me, a Jewish friend of mine told me the definition of an anti-Semite is somebody who hates Jews more than they have to. I don't know what he meant. I didn't say it, yeah. What? Testing weapons, yeah. Yep. Colonization, land theft, colonization. Okay, I think we've probably got enough there, unless anyone's really desperate to shout out something. Valerie, go on. Are you the evil one or the nice one? Okay. What? Okay, go on. Sterilization of Ethiopians. Okay. All right, I think... what? Holding detainees without... Okay, we've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff there. Anything... Californians? Put it down. Okay, I think we've got enough for the time being. We're running... Yeah, go on. Are you sure they don't make lampshades out of dead Palestinian skin? Okay, how are we doing, Dean? Okay, so I think we've got enough for the time being. And I said I'm going to refute every single one of them. We got so many, I'm going to focus on the most important ones, and I'm going to go through them. And when we have questions later, if you've got anything to ask me about, then we will deal with that. The first thing I would say, illegal occupation. Land theft, stealing other people's land, colonization. Right. What you've got to understand about that is that every bit of land under Israeli sovereignty was either purchased from its owners, whoever they were, in many cases they were Arab, purchased, often at an exorbitant price, lawfully and legitimately. And the remaining land that is in the hands of Israel is land that belonged to the state before the recreation of the state of Israel in 1948. That land belonged to the British. It was under British sovereignty, which we'd taken from the Ottoman Empire, from the Turks, under a lawful treaty at the end of the First World War, after we, with the assistance of the Jewish Legion, by the way, which I may speak about in a bit, after we had defeated them in battle. Perfectly lawful. So every single word about unlawful land theft is a lie, is a deliberate defamation of Israel. The colonial issue, Israel has illegally occupied Arab land. Where? Where was it? If you look at the reality, Gaza, Judea and Samaria, which some people call the West Bank, and the whole of the rest of Israel, all of it is Israeli sovereign territory. It cannot be, you cannot illegally occupy your own sovereign territory. Every part of that land between the river and the sea is Israeli sovereign territory. It has been since 1948, and it still is today. And the reason it is because customary international law in every single case decrees that when a new country is formed, Israel in 1948, then the boundaries of the previous highest level sovereign power are assumed by that country. And the previous sovereign power, as I mentioned, was the United Kingdom under the League of Nations, the forerunner of the UN mandate. That leading power, that top-level power, its authority, its territory was transferred under international law automatically to Israel, unless there's been some other subsequent treaty or agreement that was made between Israel and any other countries or any other entities, and there hasn't been. So all of that land belongs to Israel. There is no illegal occupation. There is no land theft. There are no illegal settlements in Israel. Now, I know a lot of people say the opposite of that, including things like the United Nations General Assembly, the International Court of Justice, various other entities. But what I've told you is absolutely accurate fact. Huh? Yeah, stay here. You're important. I might not be able to read all your writing. Okay, so let's take the various issues of killing innocent civilians. Intentionally killing innocent civilians, because of course Israel has killed innocent civilians, but intentionally killing them is a war crime. Unintentionally killing them is not a war crime, providing you take precautions. The IDF has gone beyond any other country in the world has ever gone to minimize the deaths of innocent civilians on the battlefield. That is also a fact. You will not be able to give me any other conflict in the world where an armed force has taken the steps the IDF has taken. That includes millions of text messages, millions of phone calls, millions of voice messages delivered directly to Gazan civilians, telling them to leave a certain area, telling them where to go where they can be safer, and telling them what route to take. The same applies to leaflet drops, which include maps showing these areas. All of this has been done. There's a lot more to it as well. But all of this has taken place. Never before has any army ever done that. Never. And they probably never will. So the allegation that Israel has deliberately targeted babies or innocent civilians or whatever is completely untruthful. And as a result of Israel's actions, we have seen probably the lowest, not probably, but definitely, the lowest civilian to military casualty ratio that any army has ever incurred during the course of urban conflict. And the casualty ratio, by my calculations, is less than one civilian killed for every combatant killed. Now, you might think that's bad. It is bad. Of course it is. The aim of war is to kill combatants, not to kill civilians. But when you've got an enemy that hides behind its civilian population, that fires missiles from the civilian population, that deliberately tries to get Israel, the IDF, to kill Gazan civilians, you can't, you can have no other outcome apart from the death of civilians, unless you just say, you've got a choice. You can say, we're going to kill some civilians. But we don't want to. We take all steps we can to avoid it. We don't want to, but we're going to. If we don't do that, what's the alternative? We don't hit the terrorists. And if we don't hit the terrorists, then they stay in place and they carry out another 7th of October. So what else have we got here, Dean? Yeah, starvation. Deliberate starvation, which is one of the main charges leveled against Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant at the International Criminal Court, which issued arrest warrants for them. These are lies. There is no evidence to support it. I've told you about how the other main charge against these two leaders of Israel is false because of the steps that the IDF has taken. Starvation. The IDF has opened a series of crossing points from Israel into Gaza, new crossing points, specifically to get humanitarian aid into the country. It has built roads inside Gaza, specifically to move humanitarian aid inside Gaza. It has facilitated the delivery of millions of tons of humanitarian aid into Gaza. More food has been delivered into Gaza in the 15 months since this war began than Gaza ever received in humanitarian aid in an equivalent period before the war. More food. And every Gazan, by calculation, every Gazan receives significantly more calories than a human being requires to survive. Or not just to survive, but to thrive. Those places where humanitarian aid has been prevented from getting to the population, which there have been cases, and that is because Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other thugs in Gaza hijack the aid and they sell it. They either keep it for their own purposes or they sell it at at premium prices. Free aid, this is, given to Gaza. Hamas sell it to the civilians that need it at huge inflationary prices. So there is no starvation, there is no policy of that. There's no attempt to kill innocent civilians. All of the stuff, I'm not going to go through everything, as I said, but chemical weapons. Thanks, Dean. You keep me on track. Chemical weapons have been used in Gaza. Yeah, well, every weapon that any army ever uses, except for a spear or a bayonet, is a chemical weapon. They're talking about things like white phosphorus use and red phosphorus use, but those are not unlawful chemical weapons. Those are weapons that are designed, that are allowed to be used under the laws of war, and are used and have been used in Israel, and have been used by US and British forces as well in various wars around the world, including in Afghanistan and Iraq. So it's all pretty much lies. Now, I want to just give you a brief overview of the way this conflict has gone up until now. And I'm going to look forward briefly to the future as well. I'm not going to go into detail. But what Israel has done since the 7th of October 2005 is to inflict the most devastating damage on Hamas. It has wreaked severe destruction on Hamas. It has broken its ability to operate as a terror army, which it was set up to do before. It can't do that now. Hasn't killed all the terrorists. It's killed somewhere, I think, in excess of 20,000 terrorists in Gaza since the war began, according to IDF estimates. But it hasn't killed all of them. There are still some who exist who can operate in small groups, and they can do severe damage to the Israelis as well, as we've seen in the last few days, where quite a large number of Israeli soldiers have been killed by improvised explosive devices. But they are no longer a viable military force that can threaten Israel. That's been taken away from them. Israel has done immense damage to Hezbollah in Lebanon, which started its attacks on the 8th of October, the day after the Gaza invasion. And it's been firing missiles into Israel, into northern Israel, ever since the 8th of October. And it's caused the population of northern Israel to leave the north and take refuge elsewhere inside the country. In fact, I was staying in, for most of the last 15 months, I've been staying in a hotel in Tel Aviv, which has been full of refugees, mainly from Kiryat Shimona and other places in the north, who can't go home, and they're not able to go home now. And this is where my talents came into play. I'm not exactly a modest man, but I did deploy my unique talents in support of these refugees, because many of them are religious Jews, quite strictly religious. And if you're in quite a high-rise hotel on Shabbat, how do you operate the elevator? There wasn't a Shabbat elevator. So what do? You get a Shabbat goy, and that's me. I'm a very, very skilled Shabbat goy. So Hezbollah has been hugely devastated. Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah, the long-standing leader of Hezbollah, was killed by an Israeli airstrike. Thank goodness. Don't forget, I don't like to applaud people's deaths, but I do like to applaud the deaths of terrorists like that. Who of us in this room can forget the beeper attacks, the decapitation of Hezbollah? What a genius operation. Hezbollah has also been hit extensively from the air, its rocket launch sites, its rocket storage sites. It has been seriously written down to the extent, again, where it can still pose a threat to Israel, but not the kind of level of threat before. Before this, Hezbollah was considered to be the most dangerous and powerful terrorist organization in the world, without exception. Now, what is it? It's basically begging for its own survival. When it launched its operations against Israel, it said, we're not going to stop until the IDF pull out of Gaza. Yet then, they agreed a ceasefire with Israel a considerable time ago, betraying their jihadist allies inside Gaza. Iran has been very seriously weakened. And Iran has been weakened by a number of things. First of all, by failing to do any serious damage to Israel during firing thousands of rockets, ballistic and cruise missiles and drones at Israel. And what do they achieve? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. And Israel's response, that was humiliating for Iran. Thousands of missiles, nothing. Because Israel has fantastic air defense systems. The United States, the United Kingdom, and other Israeli allies also deployed to protect Israel from those attacks. But mainly it was down to Israel's defense systems. Humiliating for a country that considers itself to be the most powerful country in the region. They're not. They're a paper tiger. And Israel responded. First response to the first wave of rocket attacks. By the way, the first wave of rocket attacks occurred on the 14th of April, which happens to be my birthday. So I assumed the Ayatollahs were putting up a bit of a firework display to celebrate my birthday, but it turned out they weren't. The first wave was dealt with relatively moderately by Israel. They did strike an Iranian nuclear site at Isfahan, and they took out some radar. The second wave of attacks, which occurred in October, I think it was, I forget exactly, they did devastating damage to Iran. They almost completely took out Iranian air defense systems, leaving Iran extremely vulnerable and extremely weak. So there's Iran, this superpower of the region, regional superpower. It's nothing. It failed to do any damage to Israel. 5 minutes. No. I told you I love the sound of my own voice. It failed to do any severe damage to Israel. It lost two of its major proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. And the other thing it lost was Syria. Syria was a vital territory for Iran. It was an absolutely fundamental part of its plan to destroy Israel. It's lost it. It's gone. We won't say what it's been taken over by, but basically it's been taken over now as a jihadist state, which itself is a threat. But Iran is nothing now. And why did that happen? It happened because of Israel's military actions against Iran and against its proxies. Iran was not in a position to be able to defend its closest ally, Assad, when he was under threat. So that's essentially an overview of the situation in the Middle East as it stands now. We're now in the hostage deal situation, which I'm just going to talk about very briefly. And the reality of that, it's good and bad. The good thing, obviously, the major good thing is that we get back, hopefully, 33 hostages, and most of whom will be alive tomorrow. The bad thing is Israel releases more than 1,000 Hamas terrorists, which is potentially very dangerous. Very, very bad aspect of it. And the other bad thing is it takes the foot off Hamas's throat by withdrawing some of its forces from Gaza. But Israel has the backing of the United States, as specified by the President, the Defense Secretary, and the National Security Advisor, to return to the fight when it thinks it needs to. So this war in Gaza is not over. Hopefully we'll get these 33 hostages back. Hopefully we might get more back. But ultimately, Israel's going back to the fight. And the one thing I think that this deal now does, which is probably almost as important as getting the hostages back, is it gets a green light from President Trump to do what it needs to do to Iran. President Biden did everything he could to stop that attack from taking place on Iran, assuming it happened. But they've got the green light to do it now. So the future, as far as the conflict in the Middle East is concerned, is, I think, quite optimistic. There are a few potential downsides, one of which is the additional influence of Turkey in the region. And Turkey is Turkey's behind the jihadist group, the HTS, that's taken over in Damascus. Turkey was a supporter of that organization and remains a supporter. And Turkey is looking to replace Iran, I think, as one of the main hegemonic powers in the Middle East. And that's a dangerous thing to Israel. But of course, Israel is preparing for that and is preparing to deal with both proxy attacks launched by Turkey and potentially direct attacks launched by Turkey against Israel. Let's not forget that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has said Jerusalem is Turkish. Who doesn't think Jerusalem belongs to them? I don't know. So there are, there's the potential for Jordan to be destabilized. Iran is working hard on that now. And there is also the potential for even more increased violence in Judea and Samaria. And I think Israel may end up conducting some kind of operation similar to Gaza in Judea and Samaria in the future. So by no means is the conflict over. All right, I'm going to really finish off because I'm being deprived of my rightful time. And I'm probably not going to give you much time to ask questions, but I'm happy to answer questions in any of the breaks or whatever. But I want to finish off by talking a bit about an organization called Club Z. Z. When I first spoke to Club Z, I saw this as a training organization, training and preparing fighters to face the attacks they were going to receive at university campuses. I no longer see it in quite that way. That's still a fundamental part of Club Z's main mission and operations. But one thing I think that's emerged even stronger during this conflict, what Marcia was speaking about yesterday, the amount of activism that Club Z members are involved in. And that is very important. It's extremely important because the contribution you make in your university campuses, through writing in magazines, newspapers, etc., the contribution you make is not just to defend your own communities, which it does, but it's also to strengthen Israel, which it certainly does. Israel's in a political warfare campaign against much of the world, and your contribution to that is extremely important. We're outnumbered here. We're heavily outnumbered, and the role you play is crucial. And it's not just crucial in terms of the physical effect on the enemy, and you do have an enemy. It's also crucial in terms of the morale of Israel. Israelis know what you do. Not every Israeli knows, but Israel sees a lot of the stuff that you do. I've been watching very closely what you've done. I've shared it as much as I possibly can. Many other organizations are doing extremely important work as well. And that is a real boost to a country that sees itself under so much pressure from various places around the world, including these international courts and the UN and other monstrous organizations like that. And you lot, you're very powerful people. Now, I'm not some idiot that stands up and says, you can do anything you want, you can achieve anything. Well, of course, it's nonsense. You can't achieve anything. Some of us can do some things, others can't. But you get told, you get fed all this stuff. You can do, and one of the apart from constraints on ability, and everyone has constraints on their ability, Jewish teenagers suffer from an additional problem, an additional restraint that the rest of us don't have, which is your parents. Because they want you to be doctors, lawyers, whatever, property developers. So that adds a constraint. You can't just do anything. But you are still powerful. You're still very powerful people. And why do you think I say you're powerful? Because you are, because you're Jewish. I'll tell you why. Because of something that you haven't influenced yourself, your age. Most of the enemy, the worst of the enemy, there are obviously a lot of older people who are pulling the strings behind it, but the worst of the enemy are people of your age and a bit older. And you are the people that can influence them. I can't. I'm a fat old grey-haired man. Who's going to listen to me? You can wield immense power and influence. But what you've got is potential power. And potential power can be transferred into actual power by two things. One, education, knowledge, and you're getting that through Club Z and through various other things. And the second is courage. Courage is, some people are born with more courage than others, but it's not an inbuilt quality necessarily. Who thinks they're fearless here? Who's fearless? You're fearless? You're fearless? Okay. Okay, well, those of you who are fearless are exceptional, because most people have fear, whether they're fighting a political warfare on the campuses or whether they are fighting a war in the trenches. Most of them have fear, but you have to overcome that fear. And that's courage. Courage is overcoming the fear. And I think one of the indications that you're willing to overcome that fear is that you're sitting in this room now and that you're taking part in some extremely effective activism. So, thank you. I would. Have you anyone heard of the prophet Isaiah? The prophet Isaiah in your Bible and mine, I think ours came first. The prophet Isaiah, this motto here we are. He didn't say here we are. He said, here I am. He had a vision of God appearing to him. He was in the 8th century BC. God appeared to him and God said, who will go for us? Who shall we send? And Isaiah said, here I am. send me. And Isaiah was he was a fierce supporter of Israel. By the way, God warned him when he said, "Here I am, send me." He warned him, you will face insults, attacks. You'll face all sorts of horrors. And therefore, if you fear that, don't take the mission. But he did. He took the mission. And he was a person who was, one, he was willing to fight. Two, Isaiah was spent most of his life proselytizing in favor of Israel as it existed then. And he was an extremely optimistic man. He foresaw, when his king asked him if Jerusalem was going to fall to their enemies, he said, no, they're not. So he was optimistic and he was right. So those are the things, those are three of the things, I think, that could be inspirational for Club Z. And therefore, I think we should take the prophet Isaiah, "Here I am, send me," as being an extremely important message to live our lives by. The almost final thing I'm going to say, and I'm being glared at from the back, but I don't mind, is that it is not a burden to fight for Israel. It's not a burden. It's actually an honor to be fighting for Israel. I'm talking about the kind of fight that you guys are fighting and going to fight. It's an honor to be able to do that, because you'll be able to look back in times to come when you're a fat old man like me with grey hair and bad teeth, although being British, I naturally have bad teeth. You'll be able to look back and tell your children and your grandchildren, when they ask you what you did while Israel was under this terrible attack, you'll be able to proudly say that you played your part. You said, "Here I am, send me." So it's all you need to ask. You don't need to ask the question. This is an old Jewish proverb, by the way. Don't ask to have your burden lightened. Ask to have your shoulders broadened. I am extremely optimistic about the future of Israel. I think it's going to come out of this war far more strongly than it went into it. And the reason I say that, there are four reasons. One, because there have been generations of Israelis, young and old, who have fought, made massive sacrifices on the battlefield to fight for their country and defend their people. And that historically proves has a transformational effect on every country and strengthens every country. Two, Israel knows who it can rely on and who it can't. And knowing that information is extremely important. And Israel is in a position to improve its self-reliance. In other words, in the future, there should be no requirement to worry if someone puts an arms embargo on Israel, because Israel's going to be in a position, already mechanisms are in effect to achieve that. Israel's going to be far more self-sufficient in arms in the future than it is today. Three, the diaspora, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I may well be wrong. The diaspora in the United States, the United Kingdom, other countries have not been as strong for standing up for Israel as in the past. They've often been far too willing to buckle under huge amounts of pressure and criticism. Today, I hope that Jews, many more Jews in the diaspora, have been strengthened by what they've seen, that they're under attack themselves, that Israel's under relentless attack from around the world, and that they need to stand up, they need to support Israel, because without the support of the diaspora, Israel is incredibly weakened. So I hope that's a further strong point. The fourth and final strong point is that Israel is going to establish normalized relations with Saudi Arabia. President Trump will see to that. And that will have an absolutely decisive effect. And Israel will become not only an economic powerhouse in the Middle East, but it will also become an absolute pillar of security for many countries in the Middle East who don't have the ability or the courage to stand up against demagogues like Iran and Turkey. And so I think Israel is going to emerge from this much more strongly than it went into it. Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any time for questions, or is that it? Well, you do have time for questions. So you cut me short, and you're now letting me ask. Okay, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I need to be controlled. I need to be controlled by Americans. Dan. Hamas is not what it was a year and a half ago. Hamas is not a formed terrorist army. They've had about 500 kilometers of their underground tunnel network destroyed. They've had many of their weapons destroyed. They've had most of their, or many of their hardened terrorists destroyed. Their chain of command, their leadership is gone. Yahya Sinwar is, I think, in Israeli custody at the moment. His body is anyway. So Hamas is not a viable organization. It's got one big danger, and that's the danger of this ceasefire as well, unless it is ended. So the United States and the UK advised Israel, do not do what you're doing. Do not go in, destroy the enemy in a certain area, come out again, and then have to go in again. But the Israelis made the decision, right or wrong, and I think it's probably right. They made the decision they weren't going to put themselves into the same trap as the Americans and the British did in Afghanistan and Iraq, occupy large areas of those countries, build bases to be attacked. So they decided on a strategy of move in, deal with it, come out, do it again if necessary. And I think that's proved relatively successful. We've had vast numbers of terrorists killed. We've had comparatively very few Israeli soldiers killed. But the big danger of it is that Hamas still has control over the civilian population in Gaza. And that needs to be ended. That's got to be stopped. And I believe that Israel will get to the point where they can do that. It might not happen overnight, but it will, I think, once this ceasefire period is finished, it will be able to do that. How effective it is, we don't know. Let's not forget, Hamas takes the rap for everything in Gaza. Hamas is to blame for everything in Gaza, but it's not true. Most of the population in Gaza, even after they know what Hamas brought down on them, still support Hamas, because supporting Hamas is opposing Israel. So you're going to still have a very, very hostile population, as you did at the very beginning. Yeah, William.
Okay. You mentioned a lot that you spend a lot of time in Israel. I was just trying to get like a more clarifying, or I just want to know exactly what you did there.
Top secret.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I'll tell you one of the major things that I did. That was to be able to view with my first hand what was going on in Israel, and then travel around the world and brief political leaders in countries around the world, including the United States, the UK, South Africa, and other countries, on the reality from the perspective of a non-Israeli, non-Jew. And that's been one of the major missions that I've had, among other things, which I, to be honest, can't really discuss, unless you promise not to tell anyone except a few close friends. Okay, thank you. Of course.
Hello. I was wondering, do you ever deal with any anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism in the UK? And if so, how do you deal with that, or how do you retaliate if you do so?
I get a lot of anti-Semitic attacks against me, and I'm not even Jewish.
Not against you, just like that you witness.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like this. I've seen very limited stuff because I don't really live in a Jewish area. But I do get involved in actions to counter anti-Semitism whenever I possibly can. And that includes the kind of rallies and protests and demonstrations that you have over here. So I get involved in that. But I also do come under personal attack. And when I get attacked for supporting Israel, I enjoy it. I like being attacked for supporting Israel. There are bad people around the world, and one of the greatest compliments you can ever have is to be insulted or attacked by bad people. And the best thing you can do with them is to make them hate you even more than they do now, and that's by taking action against them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Colonel. This may be a little controversial, but I wanted to ask you what your favorite color is.
My favorite color?
Yeah. Like out of the whole alphabet.
Red, white, and blue. The colors of the British flag.
Hi, Colonel. My name is Kiana. I'm from the Los Angeles Institute, and as someone having been affiliated with the United Nations, what's your idea on the perception that it has been infiltrated or influenced by Muslim countries? And if you do agree with that perception, what have you or other people that have been affiliated prior to the with the United Nations done to rectify that issue?
Has the United Nations been infiltrated by anti-Israel people, you say?
Yeah, and also, if you do believe so, what have you or other representatives of nations done to rectify that influence?
Yeah, well, the answer is yes, it has. And you look at the Human Rights Council there. I told you, when I spoke like that, I was one of 2 speeches, I think, out of about probably 150 speeches over the 2-day period, which spoke in support, or 3, which spoke in support of Israel. And all the rest were condemning it. Even Russia, and I appreciate some of you are Russians, but the Russian Federation had been expelled from the UN Human Rights Council a few years ago over its invasion of Ukraine. And yet they were still there. They were in the UN Human Rights Council. They made a speech, and they called on the state of Israel to stop committing war crimes, to observe the laws of war in Gaza. Russia, Putin's representative. So it's an entirely corrupt organization which has an inbuilt majority of countries that are opposed to Israel and opposed to Western values. How you reform it, I don't think you can reform it. I think you just have to look at it as it is and just not take it seriously. And I think my suggestion for dealing with the UN is to move it out of New York to North Korea.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you very much. I've got, before these guys throw me off the stage, bottle of water. I put my contact details up here. The reason I did that is because if any of you can look on my website. I've got a lot of information on there that I publish and also my social media accounts. But if any of you need any advice, any information, any guidance that you think I can give you, then don't hesitate to contact me either by social media or directly on WhatsApp. And I don't care if every person in this room does. I don't care if I have to work night and day. I think you're such an extraordinary group of people who are doing such an incredible job that I'm willing to put whatever time I need to into supporting you and helping strengthen you if I possibly can. So don't hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Kemp. You're truly an inspiration.
You want me to leave the stage?
You can stay if you want.
You can stay.
No. I don't want to embarrass you.
You shot